Hey guys, IanVV3 here, and today I'm here to talk to you about the studs and duds of runes Reforged. Now we all know there are some runes that are just a little bit too strong, or maybe absolutely broken, and there are some runes that just don't quite make the cut. Let's start with the studs. Moving into the studs, we look at precision. So in precision, we start with press the attack. This is a keystone rune, and essentially after 3 attacks it does a base damage, and then that's adaptive, so it's AP or AD based on your level and what champion and how you built your champion. And then it also does 12% damage from all sources for 6 seconds. So what this means is after 3 attacks, you do extra damage and your teammates do extra damage. Now this is very strong on any junglers who have an attack speed steroid or can auto twice and auto attack cancel. And it's good on some ADCs as well. Overall, it's very strong, and you'll see it do anywhere from 300 to 500 damage in the early game, and 1,000 to 2,000 in the late game. It scales pretty well into the game, and it's a solid choice for a lot of champions. Then we move into Triumph. Triumph is one where takedowns, which are kills or assists, give you 15% of your missing HP back, and give you an extra 25 gold. So this is good for snowballing, and it's good for sustaining in skirmishes and fights in the mid and late game. Then we move into Coup de Grace. Now Coup de Grace is one where it seems okay on paper, but the way it functions is very strong. Deal 10% more damage to champions who have less than 40% health. This means in the early game as a jungler, or as a mid laner, or as a support when you roam, you'll do that extra bit of damage that will allow you to secure that kill. And in team fights later, you'll be able to do significantly more damage with this Coup de Grace. On top of that, if you get a kill or assist, it gives you an extra AD or AP based on your champion for 10 seconds. Then we move into Domination. So Domination, we start with the keystone rune, Electrocute. Electrocute, after 3 abilities, you do AP or AD based on what champion and how you build them. You do a base damage, and then it also has pretty good scaling into the game, especially for AD champions. A 0.5 bonus AD scaling is very strong. With a 25-second cooldown late game, it scales pretty well, and it does a ton of damage early. Dark Harvest is one of those where it's pretty good. It's not quite there in solo queue and doesn't quite make it, but the reason I have the stars there and why it's on this list is because it's absolutely broken on ARAM. If you're an ARAM player, or if you just play ARAM for fun, trust me, take Dark Harvest and you won't regret it. And you might be like, but Ian, it doesn't work on AP champions. See, that's where you aren't quite correct. If you build AP scale, like AP damage, and you build some pen into the way you build your champion, you can do essentially true damage, or close to true damage, with Dark Harvest. Dark Harvest is adaptive, which means if you have an AP champion, it does AP, and if you have an AD champion, it does AD. It's a wonderful thing. Trust me, you'll never go back. Then we go on to Eyeball Collection. Eyeball Collection gives you extra AD and AP based on champion takedowns or ward takedowns. So what this means is if you get a kill or assist, you get eyeballs, and if you get wards, you get eyeballs. This extra damage allows you to secure a lot of kills early, and allows you to do more damage in the mid game. It falls off a little bit of late game, but the game is so fast paced right now that Eyeball Collection is very, very strong on a lot of jungle champions, a lot of mid laners. Then we move into Sudden Impact. Sudden Impact is after a stealth, dash, leap, blink, or teleport. You do extra lethality and magic damage pen for 5 seconds. This only has a 4-second cooldown, so you can use it 2 to 3 times in a skirmish or fight, and you can use it every 4 seconds when you're up in top lane or mid lane. It's very strong, allows you to do a lot more damage. By the end of the game, I usually see this do anywhere from 600 to 800 damage in my game, and that's extremely strong for a non-keystone rune. Moving on, we go into Sorcery. Sorcery, we have Summon Airy. Now this has been nerfed, but the reason why it's still on this list is because the champions who use this use it so well that their win rates barely change based on the way it was nerfed. The damage it got hit, but it didn't get hit enough. And the reason why Airy is so strong is because if you use it on a dot champion, any champion that has damage over time, you can use it 2 or 3 times in that dot and be able to do a lot of damage to the enemy. If they want to nerf this and make it more in line with the other keystones, they're going to have to increase the time it takes for Airy to actually come back, because it's such a strong rune at the current moment. Water Walking and Celerity together are very, very strong. Celerity by itself is probably better than Water Walking, but the two of these in combination just makes such a good big combo. Celerity gives you 4% increased movement speed, and it adds 8% of your bonus movement speed to your AP or AD adaptive. Means that, the same thing. AP if you're AP, AD if you're AD. This extra move speed It allows you to get off so many more ganks if you're a jungler, allows you to roam a lot more if you're any other lane. If you build any sort of movement speed item, it's a very strong choice because you get that extra bit of damage. With water walking, as a jungler, as a support, as a mid laner, it allows you to get so many more ganks off. Because water walking gives you 25 extra movement speed in the river, and it gives you AP or AD based on level. This is extremely strong, allows you to do a lot more damage, it makes it harder for the enemy to duel you, and you are able to get off so many more ganks or roams, depending on what champion you're playing. Moving on, we look at Resolve. Resolve has Aftershock, which is a keystone that after immobilizing an enemy champion, it increases your armor and MR by base 20, and it gives you an extra 30% of your armor and MR for 2.5 seconds. Then, at the end, you explode and deal damage for 40 to 140 with 3.5% of your maximum health. You'll see this run on some supports like Leona, on Braum, top laners like Maokai, and anyone who pretty much has an immobilizing ability. It's extremely strong, does a lot of damage, and allows a lot of the champions to stay alive for much longer than they normally would. Then we move into Guardian, and Guardian might not seem that good. You know, it's kind of questionable whether it's good or not, but a lot of the champions who utilize Guardian well have very, very high win rates, and there's even some champions like Sejuani in the jungle who people have started seeing take it in their games. What this ability does is you guard an ally within 175 units of you, and if you or your ally is targeted by a spell, you and your ally get a shield for 1.5 seconds. The scaling on the shield's pretty decent, and it does 10% of your bonus health. So on tanky champions who you build support, you're able to get that extra 10% health on top of the 60 to 150 shield. The movement speed also allows you to reposition and catch up to them, if you need to, in a fight, and is very, very strong. Overall, it has a pretty decent win rate, anywhere from 53 to 55% on champions that utilize it properly. Finally, we have Conditioning. Conditioning is one of those where you're like, it seems pretty good, the game is a little fast-paced, so I'm not sure if it's really worth it, but what makes it so strong is the 8 armor and MR is nice, but it also gives you an additional 5% armor and MR, which scales into the game with however much armor and MR you build. This has a really high win rate on champions that can utilize it well, from 54 to 55%, and it'll continue to be good moving on to the next patch. I would recommend taking this on pretty much any champion who you want to scale with, or a champion that you won't have a hard lane phase with if you're going against a certain matchup. Now, I'm going to tell you about something called Revitalize. Don't tell anyone this, but Revitalize is actually very, very strong. On champions that use shields, like supports, it has a super high win rate, anywhere from 54 to 56% win rate, and then there are some junglers who've started seeing taking it. If you're running if you're taking Talisman on your jungle champ, you should take Revitalize because it'll allow you to heal an additional 60 to 100 HP in the jungle early, and it'll allow you to heal 400 to 600 by the end of the game. It's very strong, allows you to survive longer. It's overall just really, really good for a lot of champions. Ramus, for example, has a 59% win rate taking Revitalize in the jungle. It's also getting buffed next patch, so trust me, it's going to be very good. Then moving on, we look at the Inspiration Tree. Now, Kleptomancy is one of those abilities that on paper, it looks okay. But there are some champions that just use this rune way too well. And it's actually causing certain champions to have a skyrocketed win rate. And it's changing the meta a little bit on its own. Champions like Ezreal, GP, Fiora, and Sona all utilize this rune a little bit too well. And they're able to get that extra gold anywhere from 200 to 400 in the early game, and 600 to 800 in the late game. It also allows you to steal a lot of potions, a lot of coin stacks, stuff like that, that allow you to sustain in lane and get more gold as the time moves on. Then we go on to Perfect Timing. Perfect Timing is something where you get a stopwatch at the beginning of the game, and that stopwatch doesn't actually activate until 6 minutes. But what's key about this is that one-time use of the stopwatch will really catch people off guard in the early game, and your Guardian's Angel, Gargoyle, Stoneplate, and Zanya's will all have a 15% lower cooldown. So if you have a champion that really utilizes any of those really well, Perfect Timing is the rune for you. It has a very decent win rate on champions that use it, and it's definitely worth what it gives you for that rune. Then we look at Magical Footwear. Magic Footwear gives you boots at 10 minutes, unless you get a takedown, which is a killer assist, at which point it lowers the 10 minutes by 30 seconds. The boots you have 10 move speed, an additional 10 move speed, and their upgrade costs 50 less, which also keeps the 10 move speed. This will allow you to get ganks off in the mid game, and if there's a champion that needs to keep up with champions in the mid to late game, you can definitely do that with Magical Footwear. It's very, very strong, has a really high win rate on champions that use it, hovers around 54%. I would recommend taking this rune if you're going to go Inspiration, or if you're a champion that might need the move speed moving on into the game. Then we take a look at the duds of the tree. These are the ones that didn't quite make the cut, or haven't really seen play on any champion at all. So we start with Precision. In Precision, there's something called Presence of Mind. Now, when I was doing this video, I actually had no idea what Presence of Mind even was, because I haven't seen it on a single champion. That's how rare it is. For 5 seconds after gaining a level or takedown, any mana you spend is fully restored. This seems like okay on paper, but the problem with this is, if you're waiting for that level up, or you're waiting for that takedown in order to do something in lane, you're probably going to miss out on the opportunity already. You'll be shoved in, you won't really be able to use it properly. And it's it's pretty hard to time. You can time it with minions, but it's not really going to do much in the lane itself. The champions that have tried to use it have anywhere from 45 to 47% win rates using this rune. The only champion that uses it decently is Draven, and he has somewhere around a 49% win rate with this rune in particular. Then we go into Overheal. Excess healing on you becomes a shield for up to 10% of your total health, plus 10. So what that means is, if you heal for 300, you'll do 310. And then the shield is built up from 30% of excess healing, or 300% of excess healing from allies. So if your Soraka heals you, you get an extra 300% above your bar to be able to keep that. Overheal, it seems okay on paper. It doesn't really perform well in game, and that's the biggest problem with it. You have another item that's comparable to this, which is Bloodthirster, and even in game, people would rather take Death's Dance over Bloodthirster because the shield just isn't quite enough. I would say this rune isn't very good. Based on the win rates, it has somewhere between 47 and 48% for every ADC that wants to take it, and Triumph is just overall better. Now both Presence of Mind and Overheal will be seeing buffs, and we'll revisit this in a later video to see if it really made any changes to the win rate or impact on champions that actually utilize these two. Then we look at Cutdown. Cutdown, you deal 4% more against champions that have 150 more health, up to 10% for 2,000. The comparable item to this would be Lord Dominic's, and Lord Dominic's is 2% per 100 health difference and is capped out at 1,000 health. This is significantly better than this rune in particular, and most people take Mortal Reminder over Lord Dominic's because Mortal Reminder provides Grievous runes, which is so necessary. Cutdown just doesn't really compare. You get less than 0.5% additional damage done for 150 health. Truly, it's not worth the rune slot, and the other two runes in this tree are just perform better and are utilized better by many more champions than this rune in particular. Moving into Domination, there's really only one rune in Domination that stands out as being a weak rune. The other runes are all used or have their place in the meta. Predator itself has been buffed. You channel for 1.5 seconds, you gain 45% move speed, and then damaging attacks or abilities at the end of this effect deal additional damage. The problem with this is that it scales worse than Electrocute, scales worse than Dark Harvest. The ganks you get off, you're like, wow, this gank is so impactful, but I have to wait so long to use it again. It just doesn't really feel like the time waited, and it feels like something like Electrocute does significantly better. The only champion that really uses this at all is Hecarim, and even with Hecarim, it feels like Electrocute's better. There are just better options in other trees. It feels like Predators doesn't quite make the cut. Maybe if they increase the scaling or increase the cooldown or decrease the cooldown more, you might have a little bit better chance of having this actually be an impactful rune. But right now, where it stands, it's just not good enough. Moving into Sorcery. Sorcery is one of the tree in the game that's kind of the most balanced against itself. What that means is all the runes in each line have their place in the meta. They're all good in certain areas. You don't really see any of them really struggling to be picked or have a decent win rate. Overall, it's a pretty solid tree. Might be a little bit too solid, but a lot of these runes here can be taken primary or secondary, and there should be no problem. Then we look at Resolve. The reason I say none-ish is because it's a pretty solid tree. You know, most of the runes are balanced on each other. They have their place in the meta. But Overgrowth, which is the one that gives you extra life based on the minions that you kill, doesn't quite do enough, and the win rate doesn't support it enough for it to be like decent. It hovers around a 49 to 50%, and it's pretty decent. It's not terrible, but it's not amazing. So it's just okay. The rest of the Resolve tree is pretty balanced around itself, and it's actually probably the most balanced tree out of all the trees in League currently. Moving on, we look at Inspiration. There's really only two that stand out a lot in this tree. Minion Dematerializer. Now, Minion Dematerializer, it seems like a noob-friendly rune. You know, someone who's brand new to the game might take this to help them farm a little bit better. It doesn't really do anything. It doesn't really provide you any stats. Most of the champions who want to split build items to split so they can clear fast. Most of the champions who want to clear in group have an item that allows them to clear in group. So Minion Dematerializer is just kind of there. It helps you a little bit in the early game, but not enough to make it impactful at all. I would overall just say this rune should never be taken on any champion ever. It's not worth it. Not worth to even try. Right now, it doesn't make the cut in anything. It's probably the worst rune in the game. Riot has said that they're going to try and make improvements in this and find a way to bring it back into the meta somehow, but we'll just have to wait and see for that. Celestial Body was one of those runes where last season, the way the meta was going, you know, tanks were becoming really prevalent in the jungle, and top lane, you had tanks pretty much everywhere. And they were doing very well. They had a lot of health, they were really strong. And when this first came out, it was plus 100 health and minus 5% damage to champions and monsters until 10 minutes. And I was like, that's really good. You know, I can jungle more. That extra 100 health will allow me to be healthier in a gank. I think Riot realized it was a bit too strong, and then they over-nerfed it and brought it down to 10% damage to champions and monsters. And the nerf to that, because the game's so fast-paced right now, Celestial Body just isn't good enough and doesn't make the cut to use on really any champion. You could argue it's okay on some supports, but it's still just okay, and it's never going to be good in the current state that it's in. So in conclusion, most of the runes are just okay. All the runes that we touched on are either overtuned or completely undertuned to absolutely bad. There are some runes that are versatile and can be used in every situation on every champion, and there are some runes that just kind of have their niche place, but that's okay. You know, there's some runes that you want to have their niche place. You want them to be there in case you need them. Overall, minor balance does need to come through, because the runes that are really bad need to be brought up to the runes that are good, so that way we have more versatile rune pages. Much like how we had with the combination of runes and masteries in the old system, we don't really have that now. The pages have already started to become stagnant, and you're seeing a lot of set patterns in the way the champions are played. Anyways, that'll be all from me. I hope you guys go and follow my Twitter at ianvv3_LOL, or follow my Twitch at ianvv3. Please remember to like and subscribe to my channel and on this video. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day. I will see all of you guys later. Peace out.